We have some breaking news today, a crazy update in the Vic Mignogna situation, and before we get started, I want to give a massive thanks to Point of No Return from Kiwi Farms and also Nadisiko on Twitter. They both did a great job compiling information. Point of No Return specifically compiled this all into a very neat post, and Nadisiko, well, did some good research into Monica and Ron's TCPA because allegedly they sourced some information, which in this video, thanks to Point of No Return, we are going to completely dismantle this source. And it doesn't just ruin a source from Monica and Ron's TCPA, but it questions the validity of everything from the get-go. And while we've been questioning things for a while, this is certainly something that is a crazy and very important development. The players in today's video are going to be Hanleia, Nyako, Illic Guardiola, and Vic Mignogna. And I'm mentioning that at the beginning because I'm actually functioning at like 0% today. I don't know, guys. I went to sleep last night early. I woke up after like 2 hours and I couldn't get back to sleep. So I am struggling today, but I'm going to do my best to cover this in a good manner. I don't want to mess this one up. I'll do my best. I hope you enjoy. I'll see you right after the intro. Welcome back. We're going to jump right into this one because there is quite a lot to cover, to be honest. But let me also mention, if there's anything I don't show on screen that I'm talking about, there will be a link to posts in the description to archive links of said posts. So if you are so inclined, you can go find them there. Starting at the top, though, from Point of No Return's post over on the farms, reads, "It's incredible how much has happened since Hanleia tweeted back in January a story from Pool, one that was nothing more than a fever dream. There's the classic tweet, you all know it. Hey, at Funimation, why do you employ a known, not a good person to work with, in other words?" Then wrote, "A friend linked me this, CW." And that's the post from Nyako that we are going to be covering a lot in this video. Because Nyako, turns out, isn't the most reliable person. You see, we're going to go into a lot more detail about this, but just know from the beginning so you can kind of see how this whole thing plays out. Hanleia sources Nyako. Nyako doesn't even remember her own story properly, and even later admits to having issues with her memory. Again, we'll go into more detail throughout this video. For example, Nyako was literally stating misinformation about Vic, confusing Vic for Gardolia, completely misrepresenting the reality of the situation. Hanleia sources Nyako, Monica and Ron then source Nyako, and imagine sourcing someone who's so unreliable. Now, let's continue. So this next part is going to be Nyako's accusation against Vic, Nyako's story. I'm going to not show it on screen, archive link in the description. Two reasons. Number one, the content, the material of the post. Number two, it's also a very long post and I want to kind of paraphrase it and skip through it. But again, the full thing in the description, archive link for you. So here we go. Here's some of what Nyako wrote on Pool. "Although I mostly lurk, I have to chime in here. Vic is a bad person, and I know this from personal experience. When I was only 16, we had a very bad experience in an elevator, just Vic and myself. Being a fangirl child, despite what happened and how disgusting it made me feel, I just let it occur, and due to other things that were going on in my life at the time, I didn't think anyone would believe me anyways, even if I said something. And I just have to state that Vic is indeed all that you guys are accusing him of. He had been speaking to myself and a friend online over the phone for months before the convention and had even told us that we should meet up and hang out in his room at the con. He said if we couldn't pay for the con, we could still hang out and have lunch or something. He seemed really nice. He listened to me and even let me pour my heart out about my difficult home life. He told me it was not my fault. He was so kind and patient. I thought he genuinely cared about me. He paid for my food at the end of the day at the convention and even gave my friend a small box filled with Full Metal Alchemist merch and his CDs. He was polite and sweet until I ran into him alone in the elevator. My friend decided to go up the stairs back to the hotel room. I decided to go in the elevator because I have a hip deformity, and that's when the incident with Vic occurred, allegedly. Now, of course, I do find it a bit odd that the friend decided to go up the stairs and not just take the elevator with Nyako. She alleges that the friend was in a hurry to get back to the room. Maybe the room wasn't that far from the stairs. Maybe it was worth taking the stairs to be in a hurry. I don't know. It's a little bit odd, but it's not entirely unbelievable. But the rest of the story is certainly very weird, and it gets a lot worse. Nyako then wrote, He did these things knowing that I would not say anything. I tried to tell myself I was mistaken, that maybe the whole thing was an accident or I misunderstood what was going on, that it had to be my fault because Vic was so nice to us. Someone who had been so nice to us wouldn't do that. Someone who knew about my home life, who told me it was not my fault, things happened to me, wouldn't do that. I was only 16, and let me stress that there was no way I looked or even sounded close to that age. The previous year, I couldn't even ride the bus to school alone because I didn't look old enough, even with my school ID that had my picture on it. I didn't even look old enough to ride alone on the city buses. My city lets 8-year-olds go to school and home on the city bus without supervision. So she's alleging that she looked younger than 8? That's a bit strange too. Continuing on, there is no way I look old enough to have what occurred be okay, and neither I or my friend had ever mentioned our ages or that we were in high school when talking to Vic. Even now, more than 10 years later, I can still pass for a middle school student, and this grown man thought it was okay to do. Continuing, I barely remember the rest of that day. I remember the doors opening and seeing my friend, then nothing until the next morning when I woke up in the mutual friend's room, having locked myself in the bathroom and slept in the tub. She finishes the post by talking about the possibility of something being put into her drink. A friend suggests that might be the case, but she doesn't seem to agree with that because she only drank out of her own water bottle or fast food cups that she never let out of her sight, apparently. And finally, she mentions that she did go to the police, but they didn't do anything. What's weird about that is she says the police didn't do anything because it occurred too long ago. So why did she wait to go to the police if she decided to go to the police? And if she remembered things like locking herself in the bathroom and waiting in the tub, you know, things that would be certainly traumatic, why would you wait? It's just another inconsistency. And I'm going to stress it again. I've already said this in the video, but it gets even worse. Point of no return, hopping back over to KF, wrote, her sanity slowly starts to unravel in subsequent posts. When asked about confronting Vic, she says, quote, I first considered it when Vic married a 16-year-old to avoid charges. In 2014, he was facing possible charges in Texas, so he took the girl and her mom to Vegas so the mom could sign off on their marriage so he couldn't be charged. The person she is describing is Ilya Gardolia and not Vic Mignogna. So this is where she really starts, as a point of no return puts it, to unravel. Her sanity starts to unravel. She starts mixing things up and even admits that her memory isn't right. And let me again mention that Hanlea sourced Nyako, and Monica and Ron in their TCPA also sourced Nyako to support their TCPA's weight and merit. And here's that very post. One user writing, have you ever thought about confronting him? I realize that it would most probably not be a good idea, but have you entertained the idea of it? And Nyako responds saying, I would consider it if I actually thought he would remember what he did, but because of the kind of person he is, there's no way he remembers it because it's normal behavior for him. For him, it was just another day at a con, and I was just another fan. I wouldn't be surprised to find out he's done this to other girls, or that I was not the first. I first considered it when Vic married a 16-year-old to avoid the stuff we already talked about. So again, this is she's explaining something that Vic did not do here at all. The names of the mom and daughter weren't in any of the articles. I read about them at the time. But 10 out of 10, it is in public records for the Clark County, Nevada, if you know how to find them. And if he is willing to go that far to cover himself up, you better bet that there is other stuff we don't know about. You are not even talking about the right person right here. Literally spreading complete lies and misinformation. What else do you expect from PULL, though? For the sake of transparency, here is the headline of the article that proves that this is not Vic, and she's referring to Gardolia. Drama teacher and voice actor 41 caught. And then we're going to skip. Here you go. Ilya Gardolia arrested Thursday on charges. When he first began to suspect police were investigating him, Gardolia took the girl to Las Vegas and married her. The girl's mother was present and didn't stop the wedding because she feared harm to her daughter's acting career. Gardolia cannot be prosecuted for it because the relations he had with the girl were after the marriage, but he can be charged for anything he did before the wedding night. Police found a text message from the girl from before the wedding that said something he probably wouldn't want the PD to find. Let's just put it that way. Here's where things take a somewhat long-winded and interesting turn. Another user on Pool starts questioning the story a little bit, but don't get me wrong, not questioning as in having any doubt. They seem to completely believe Nyako's story, But they do ask for some proof or some evidence. They try to get Nyako to hit up her friends to see if they recall the story. I'll cover it right now. Let's get into the post. I'm just going to kind of skim through it again, though. It's very long-winded. And again, some of the content, you know. So from the top, though, this one user writes, I'm so sorry you had to go through what you've seen, what you've been through. As someone who also has experienced similar, the idea that Vic hasn't been put in jail yet is seriously scary. I really have to commend you for being so strong and brave to talk about this. Watching Vic get fired from Funimation and Rooster Teeth is not justice enough. My mother is a social worker, my stepfather was a Marine, and I have multiple relatives who are involved with law enforcement and public safety, so at the very least, getting a warrant for an investigation should be easy if you could give more details. Like you said, this happened when you were around 16, right? Exactly how long ago was this? Do you remember what convention you all went to, or what hotel you or he stayed in? I ask this because, depending on the timing, the hotel might have had cameras in their elevator and might still have records of such events. If we can really narrow this all down, we might be able to see some real justice done. It would also help if you still had the chat messages you shared with Vic during this time. This would be even greater evidence against him, although I definitely understand why you wouldn't keep such things around. I know how awful the thought of it can all be. In any case, you have my support and my admiration. Thank you for having so much courage. If you want to email me and talk about how we may be able to really help finish Vic off, you can drop me a message at this email address. I wish you the absolute best. And Nyako's response. I did attempt to report it at one point shortly after I had moved out of my mom's house. When I reported it to the officer I spoke to about it, they said because of how much time passed, there was nothing they could do, and they did not even bother to file a report on it as far as I know. And if they did, they didn't give me the report number or anything. I no longer have any way to get into the accounts I used at the time, as it happened over 10 years ago. So, can't source the police, can't get into her accounts to show anything. And then she writes, also a bit more relevant, talking to one of my friends who was friends with me at the time, as she pointed out that, in fact, I wasn't quite 16 at the time since it happened over summer break before I turned 16. Keep that in mind. Says it happened over summer break. More on that coming up. And then she says, as I didn't pay for any part of the con, I don't even recall the name of the con anymore or the hotel. So, no police report, no information from the police. Don't remember the name of the hotel. Don't remember the name of the convention. Didn't even have the age right, apparently. And then she says, it doesn't help that I have traumatic brain injury a few months after it happened. So a lot of that time period is hard for me to remember and put a solid timeline on. I have many gaps in my memory for a lot of things around that time. Unfortunately, all the memories I have, I don't have blank spots in for that time, are instances of bad things occurring. So she alleges that the only thing she remembers are the incidents themselves, but like none of the details leading up to it, or none of the details that would help actually prove that she's not just fabricating this. Isn't that convenient? Says it makes her want to be sick. Even as an adult, she's barely 5 feet tall and only weighs 100 pounds. Goes on to talk about that and how Vic never could have thought that she was old enough for any of this to be okay. Says how she can't go into elevators alone anymore. Hearing Vic's voice and seeing his face makes her want to throw up and completely shut down. And to Vic, it was just another day. I was just another fan. And this is, she's already said that. It's interesting how she can completely put hearsay in what Vic's opinion is, right? And I hope he lives a long life as a ruined man, if only so he can live long enough to truly feel remorse for his actions. JK, that will never happen, and we all know it, is how Nyako finishes that post. And again, what's that recurring theme throughout this video? It gets even worse. And indeed, it still does. Let's take a look. So the response Nyako gets from this user reads, so you still have contact with those friends? That's great. Maybe they can remember some of the details for you. Honestly, every little bit helps. If you get the chance, could you ask them what convention it was that y'all went to? I'm guessing it was anime specific, right? Also, maybe see if they have the records of those conversations you shared. And I have gathered it wasn't any less than 10 years ago since you were so young. But can you approximate how many years ago it was? Very reasonable questions being asked here. What do you think the response is, guys? Let's take a look. I'm only really in contact with one person from that time period, and they didn't go with me. It would have been around 06 or 07. I wish I could remember more details or talk to those friends again, but the people who I went with all moved overseas shortly after. Isn't that convenient? Memory has a memory issue shortly after. The friends move overseas shortly after, which doesn't mean that you can stop, that doesn't mean you stop talking to them and stop being friends with them just because they move overseas, but okay. That con was the last time we saw each other because they moved right after the con. I always thought that their parents just wanted us out from underfoot while they got everything packed up for the move. Okay. I've tried finding them on social media over the years, but I've never been able to find any trace of them. Yeah, okay, sure. And what about the phone numbers and stuff? You just lost it all? Oh, you're locked out of your account or something? Like, dude, this stuff does not add up. I am sorry. And that same user then responds saying, so this happened to you, and just after it happened, your friends had to move away? You must have felt so alone. I hope you were able to confide in someone nearby. Maybe your parents remember and could help you? Do you at least remember what state/country the convention was in? What country or state? Oh my goodness. This person, why are you like this? You see how inconsistent and unreliable this information is, but you still blindly believe it. And Nyako's response to that reads, yeah, it sucked, but I was used to it. My mother can't even take care of herself, so I had to be the adult and make sure everything got taken care of from the time I was in 4th or 5th grade. She was very mean to me until I went no contact, and it took a legal no contact order to get her out of my life, which she went against several times. My dad wasn't a huge part of my life after my mother divorced him. She claimed he was mean to me and my siblings, when in reality it was all her, so she didn't let us see him much. I know it was in Arizona, as I lived in the Phoenix area at the time. Keep this in mind. This is going to be very important in just a minute. So again, she says, I know it was in Arizona, as I lived in Phoenix area at the time, and we had to drive quite a ways to get to the con. If the con had been in the Phoenix area, we would have just driven to and from or taken public transit and not bothered with a hotel. I don't think it was out of state because my mother never would have allowed me to cross state lines. What Nyako said there got completely dismantled by Point of No Return, who wrote, Vic Mignogna attended exactly one convention in Arizona from 03 to 08. That was the Phoenix Cactus Comic-Con in 07, which was held at the Mesa Convention Center. As the name implies, Phoenix Cactus Comic-Con is close to Phoenix. Anyone living there would not need to stay in a hotel. And the date of the convention, January 26th through 28th, the middle of winter. It is as far from summer break as you can get. Point of No Return then sources an archived link of the list of conventions that Mignogna has been to, so we don't go scrolling through multiple years of convention appearances. I'm just going to leave the link in the description if you are so inclined to take a look. And here's the segment from Monica and Ron's TCPA where they allegedly sourced Nyako. Take a look at that. Convention goer Nyako links the thread there. Oh my gosh. Did you even check your sources? How could you think that was a good idea? What are you guys doing? You trying to throw the case or something? I really don't know. It's baffling. So there you have it. A crazy series of events, isn't it? Nyako makes some crazy story with inconsistencies and doesn't even have any proof. Even when fellow pool members ask for proof, she has absolutely nothing to provide. Hanleia sources Nyako's tweet, targets, Funimation and stuff to try to mess with Vic's livelihood. Mars Girl then gets involved and retweets that, and it just gets out of control. All built on misinformation and lies, which is no surprise. We've seen it over the months, but it's crazy just how far back this all runs. From the get-go, they played their cards so terribly wrong. They have handled this so poorly, and it's great seeing it all come back to bite them. Lastly, I know we covered the Iliac stuff very briefly in this video, and that's okay. We don't need to go into detail about it. Allegedly, Iliac really was guilty of some very bad things. Nyako confused Iliac with Vic, completely ruining the little credibility that she had, if she even had any to begin with. And a little fun fact, little trivia here. Apparently, Monica and Iliac used to have an interesting history together. Let's just put it that way. Isn't that convenient? Monica and Iliac. You also have other people like Sarah Wiedenheft and her brother. What's with these people on KickVic having, very interesting relationships with people that have been caught up in things that they sort of, are alleging Vic does. Isn't that ironic? I think it is. Some shout-outs for the wonderful people who helped promote my last video over on Twitter. Thank you, Professor Chaos, Michael Rule, Mike Walters, Lone Wolf McCude, Anime Tony, Emerald Dragon, Wesley the Strategist, Knight Mad Dragon, Louis Murillo, Ryu Mao, Drathio, Dracaprico? Drathio? What did I write there? I'm sorry. I think it's Drathio, Rowan, On the Brain, Ambi-Pass Studios. Thank you very much, my friends. It certainly helps to share the videos. Liking, subscribing, all that jazz certainly helps as well. And again, a special shout out to Point of No Return and Nadisiko. Consider joining our Discord server, open to the public, link below. And finally, if you would be inclined to support this channel even more directly, we have a Patreon, PayPal, and Streamlabs link, and also a Teespring merch store link all below as well. And don't forget, archive links there if you would like to take a look. I'll see you next time.